Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. In today's update, we are taking a closer and more analytical look at a developing political situation in Iraq that could have meaningful implications for economic reform, investor confidence, and ultimately the outlook for the Iraqi dinar. The focus of this discussion centers around reported statements attributed to Nouri al-Maliki, a prominent political figure and head of the State of Law coalition, and his position regarding the possibility of a second term for current Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani. According to the information circulating, al-Maliki has indicated a willingness to withdraw his own candidacy for the position of Prime Minister, but only under the condition that Prime Minister al-Sudani is not nominated for a second term. This type of conditional political positioning introduces a new layer of complexity into Iraq's already intricate political landscape. It raises important questions about coalition dynamics, power-sharing arrangements, and the broader trajectory of governance in the country. To understand why this matters, especially for those following the Iraqi dinar, we need to step back and examine how political stability and leadership continuity influence economic policy. Iraq's economic reforms over the past few years have been closely tied to efforts by the current administration to stabilize the financial system, improve transparency, strengthen banking regulations, and manage currency-related challenges. Any uncertainty regarding leadership continuity can potentially slow down or disrupt these processes. From a purely analytical standpoint, al-Maliki's position reflects a strategic political maneuver rather than an economic policy stance. It suggests that negotiations behind the scenes are intensifying and that different political blocs are attempting to shape the future leadership structure in a way that aligns with their interests. However, what stands out in this situation is the reported contradiction between electoral performance and political leverage. The narrative suggests that despite receiving fewer votes compared to other major blocs, al-Maliki is attempting to influence the selection of the next prime minister. At the same time, there is a strong assertion that Prime Minister al-Sudani's bloc performed well in terms of popular support. If accurate, this creates a tension between democratic representation and political negotiation, which is not uncommon in parliamentary systems, but still carries implications for public perception and governance effectiveness. For Iraqi dinar followers, the key question is not about personalities, but about policy continuity. Markets and investors, whether domestic or international, tend to favor stability. When a government demonstrates consistency in its economic direction, it builds confidence. On the other hand, political uncertainty can lead to hesitation in investment decisions, delays in reform implementation, and volatility in financial expectations. In the short term, this situation may contribute to a cautious environment. Financial institutions, both within Iraq and abroad, may adopt a wait-and-see approach until there is greater clarity behind the future leadership. This does not necessarily mean that there will be immediate negative consequences for the Iraqi dinar, but it does suggest that upward momentum driven by reform confidence could temporarily slow. It is also important to consider the role of the popular mobilization forces, which are mentioned as entering the fray. Their involvement adds another dimension to the situation, as they represent a significant socio-political and security component within Iraq. When such influential groups become part of the political equation, it can signal broader negotiations that go beyond standard parliamentary discussions. However, it is crucial to remain grounded in facts and avoid over-interpreting early-stage political developments. Political negotiations in Iraq often involve multiple phases, shifting alliances, and evolving positions. Statements made during these periods are sometimes strategic and may not reflect final outcomes. Therefore, while this development is noteworthy, it should be viewed as part of an ongoing process rather than a definitive turning point. Looking at the economic angle, Prime Minister al-Sudani's tenure has been associated with efforts to address key structural issues. These include improving public sector efficiency, managing oil revenues more effectively, and working toward financial system modernization. For those tracking the Iraqi dinar, these reforms are significant because they contribute to the underlying strength and credibility of the currency. If there is continuity in leadership, it is generally expected that these reforms would continue along a similar trajectory. This could support gradual improvements in economic stability, which is a positive factor for the dinar over the long term. On the other hand, if there is a change in leadership, the impact will depend on the policies of the incoming administration. A smooth transition with a commitment to existing reforms would likely minimize disruption, whereas a shift in direction could introduce new uncertainties. Another important factor to consider is public sentiment. The claim that al-Sudani's bloc received strong voter support suggests that there may be public backing for continuity. In democratic systems, public opinion can influence political negotiations, especially when legitimacy becomes a focal point. If the electorate perceives that their preferences are not being reflected in political decisions, it can lead to pressure on political actors to adjust their positions. For the Iraqi dinar, public confidence is an often overlooked but critical element. A population that believes in the direction of its government is more likely to engage positively with the financial system, support reforms, and contribute to economic stability. Conversely, political friction can sometimes affect confidence levels, even if the underlying economic fundamentals remain unchanged. In the medium term, the outcome of this political situation will likely shape the pace of reform rather than its overall direction. Iraq's need for economic diversification, financial modernization, and improved governance is widely recognized across political lines. Therefore, while leadership changes can influence how these goals are pursued, they are unlikely to eliminate the need for reform altogether. It is also worth noting that external factors continue to play a role in Iraq's economic outlook. Oil prices, regional dynamics, and global financial conditions all interact with domestic siyasat. Even in a stable political environment, these external variables can influence the performance of the Iraqi economy, and by extension, the dinar. When political uncertainty is added to the mix, it can amplify the importance of these external factors. From a long-term perspective, the most important takeaway for Iraqi dinar followers is that sustainable currency strength is built on consistent economic fundamentals. These include fiscal discipline, monetary policy effectiveness, banking sector development, and overall economic growth. Political developments can influence these factors, but they are part of a broader system that evolves over time. In this context, it is important to avoid drawing direct or immediate conclusions based the value or revaluation prospects of the Iraqi dinar based solely on political headlines. While leadership decisions are important, they are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Responsible analysis requires looking at the full picture, including economic data, policy direction, and institutional progress. Returning to the current situation, al-Maliki's reported condition can be seen as a negotiation tactic aimed at shaping the next marhala siyasiyya. Whether or not this position gains traction will depend on how other political blocs respond, as well as on the broader tawafuq dakhil al-Parliament. It is entirely possible that compromises will be reached that alter the initial positions being reported on. For viewers and investors alike, the most prudent approach is to monitor developments closely while maintaining a balanced perspective. Political debates and negotiations are a normal part of governance, especially in a system as diverse and multi-layered as Iraq's. What matters most is the outcome in terms of stability, policy continuity, and economic direction. If Prime Minister al-Sudani remains in a position to continue his policies, it could reinforce a sense of continuity that supports ongoing reforms. If a different leadership arrangement emerges, the focus will shift to understanding the Nai policy tarjihat and how they align with economic stability. In either case, the Iraqi dinar's trajectory will depend more on execution than on rhetoric. As we conclude today's analysis, it is clear that this development is significant but not nirnayak on its own. It highlights the dynamic nature of Iraqi politics and underscores the importance of leadership decisions in shaping the country's future. At the same time, it reinforces the need for careful, fact-based analysis when assessing implications for the Iraqi dinar. Stay focused on credible information, avoid speculation, and remember that meaningful economic progress is built over time through consistent policies and effective governance. Thank you for watching. If you want to continue receiving responsible and factual updates on the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's economy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. This content is provided for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.